A uniform light, with no visible source, filled the place. The curricular review hall of the Vakir Legal University always imposed silence even before anyone spoke. It was a hexagonal space, perfectly symmetrical. The circular platforms where the members of the administrative committee were positioned were kept at a steady height, slightly higher than the floating plane that served as the floor. Around them, thousands of suspended holograms glowed in vertical columns, complete student records, reforms, regulations, comparative jurisprudence from multiple species. Sravax Nukelun was at the center of the geometric figure, trying to float at his usual height, although every breath lifted him a few millimeters. His 12 tentacles trembled with the methodical anxiety that only a young Vakir could experience when about to challenge a structure as old as his own species. In front of him, 6 elder figures whose shells showed more rigid patterns in opaque tones watched him. The cold steadiness of their balance only made it more obvious how unstable he was. He held a datapad. "I present my proposal for curricular reform." His limbs extended the document toward the area of a reading field that captured and expanded it. The curriculum grid lacks a full module on legal representation for humans. The examiners did not react. The academic file unfolded into diagrams. Each node corresponded to a course, which in turn split into rows of content, and there, at one end, almost imperceptible, lay the origin of the conflict. A small bit of text off to the side. Sravax pointed at it. "The section on legal interaction with humanity takes up barely more space than a marginal note." His floating height increased by 5 centimeters. He noticed, tried to correct it, but anxiety stopped him. The committee spoke as it always did, in chorus. "Humans represent one another. They do not require our intervention." The administrative aide, positioned to one side on a lower platform, recorded the response. Sravax slightly contracted his frontal plates, as if he needed to filter the information to make sense of it. His tentacles slowly rotated. "That statement does not resolve the omission." His voice took on a sharper sheen. "What happens if one of them has no lawyer in a remote system, or if there is no immediate availability? And what if the conflict requires immediate representation?" The voice of the committee flowed again, immaculate. "The trial will be postponed until a human lawyer arrives." His body swayed 1.5 centimeters in an involuntary tick. That is not a solution." His appendages tightened. "It is a procedural delay. We offer multi-species representation precisely to prevent gaps like that. It's illogical." One of the holographic columns slowly descended in front of the committee. The chorus consulted it without moving a single tentacle. Only after a long silence did they speak. "Your insistence has been recorded. For the record, we consider the proposal inadmissible." The young Vakir felt his plates vibrate with a mix of frustration and bewilderment. He dropped 1 centimeter, then rose free. The aide lifted his compound gaze slightly, a reminder to Sravax that his agitation was obvious. "I request an expended justification," he said, faster than he should have. "The human omission appears to be systematic." The committee closed the digital file with a joint gesture, as if they had been waiting for exactly that breaking point to cut off the discussion. "A formal response will be sent to you," the chorus released, as it dissolved into 6 individual voices. "You may leave now," one of them indicated. The young Vakir attempted a smooth descent toward the exit. His body was still vibrating, trying to find a balance that logic, or rather the lack of it, had just taken from him. The administrative aide followed the young one and spoke as they passed through the geometric doorway that led out of the chamber. "Sravax," he said in a neutral voice, "do not take the committee's verdict as something personal." He nodded, though his lateral plates tightened. The administrative hallway was narrow, perfectly straight and silent, the walls polished to a shine that returned a diffuse reflection of the surroundings. Zravaks moved forward slowly, trying to maintain a stable center of gravity. An academic assistant floated slightly behind him. At that distance, elders usually adopted. The silence broke when a figure approached from the far end of the corridor. The administrative courier was a Vakir with pale plates, seemingly carved on purpose for formal duties. He carried 3 paper envelopes, real, fibrous, slightly yellowed. In their species, this had a very specific meaning. Something definitive, irrevocable, an amicable closure that warned the recipient there would be no further instances for discussion. The courier stopped before the young one and his companion, with a slight downward dip of institutional respect. "Zravaks Nulkelon," he declared with a ceremonial tone. "I bring correspondence from the Superior Academic Committee." Zravaks extended 2 tentacles, still tense from the lingering displeasure of his last encounter with them. The envelopes were handed to him one by one, marking an intended sequence for their reading. They bore different mineral ink stamps, each for a different purpose. First, grey seal of administrative neutrality. Second, yellow seal of bureaucratic clarification. Third, a faint red seal of final directive. This unusual chromatic hierarchy sent a tremor along Zravak's plates. The courier spoke. "The committee requests that you review them immediately. I must witness the reading as per protocol." Nearby, the academic assistant remained silent, floating with an uncomfortable calm. Zravaks broke the first seal. The paper produced an organic sound, strange in an environment where almost all documentation was holographic. The message was brief, direct. "We reiterate that humans have sufficient human lawyers for their own representation." It closed the envelope with a small involuntary gesture of frustration. The courier waited, motionless. He opened the second. The yellow ink spread in geometric patterns. "According to recorded precedents, Vakir intervention has not been necessary in litigation involving humans. Procedural delays are accounted for in interspecies regulations." His breathing turned uneven. 3 of his tentacles folded against his shell, a gesture of contained disbelief. The third envelope felt heavier, at least symbolically. He opened it slowly. A red seal was never used lightly. "Given your persistent questioning regarding human legal representation, you must report to the Judicial Diplomatic Liaison, Ra-Ma Zintalun. There will be no further clarifications from the committee on this matter." Zravaks' plates vibrated in a brief, sharp pulse. The courier inclined his floating body in a formal gesture. "With this communication, the institutional exchange with the committee is concluded." He paused, as if giving the other Vakir space. "I wish you stability." And he departed, following the perfect straight line of the hallway. Zravaks and the assistant were left alone. The young one was still holding the envelopes. His appendages didn't know whether to crumple them or archive them. Frustration was not a desirable part of the educational process, but it was there, growing along the inner edge of his plates. Then the administrative assistant spoke. "Zravaks, you ask too much. Only those who do are sent there." It was impossible to discern whether that was a discreet compliment or a solemn warning. Perhaps both. The Office of the Diplomatic Liaison for Human Legal Affairs was not the largest in the Vakir legal complex, but it was certainly the most imposing. The octagonal room had a calculated austerity. 8 identical walls without adornments, lined with hermetically sealed file cabinets, arranged in vertical columns that rose until they vanished into the upper dimness. They held fiscal documents, sealed, many of them never consulted by anyone except the figure who guarded them. Ra-Ma Zintalun floated at the center of the shape with a stability impossible to imitate. There was no variation in his height, no sway, no tremor. Zravaks stopped the moment he crossed the threshold. He didn't need anyone to tell him who Ramar was. The place said everything. The Vakir did not display hierarchy with insignias or ranks or thrones. Physical presence was the only real marker of weight in their society. The one who mastered their flotation, their luminous pulse, their fractal pattern, was worthy of respect. The young one felt his own body retract slightly, as if the room's center adjusted him involuntarily. His tentacles, tense moments before with uncertainty, moved now with almost ceremonial caution. Ramar did not turn his head. He spoke with a tone that didn't need to be raised. "Zravax, Nakillan, come forward." He advanced slowly. With each meter, the silence seemed to grow denser. As soon as he reached the minimum protocol distance, Ramar inclined his frontal plates, a gesture that in any other Vakir would be a simple greeting, but in him it felt like recognition. Zravax tried without success to control the faint vibration in his plates. I was instructed to come to you, he managed. The sentence came out far less formal than he had rehearsed. It's about the human module and the lack of adequate legal representation. Zintalun shifted his flotation just slightly, as if that small movement reordered the air around him. "I know," he replied, without the slightest surprise. "The committee did not give you what you were seeking." Zravax nodded, still confused by the diplomat's calm. "I didn't insist out of stubbornness," he hurried to clarify. "We're a species capable of representing anyone in the absence of native lawyers. Why exclude them?" Ramar floated a few centimeters to one side, approaching one of the sealed file cabinets. He did not touch it. The gesture alone was enough to indicate that it contained documents no student should ever see. "You didn't come here because of merit." His voice didn't sound scolding, more like diagnostic. "You came because something doesn't add up for you." The line fell like a piece in a trial that closed without possibility of appeal. Zravax lowered his multifaceted gaze a bit. "Nothing fits when it comes to them." Ramar observed him with a stillness that was less calm than containment. "Correct." The atmosphere seemed to tense, and that is exactly the problem. The young Vakir felt a surge inside him, frustration at not understanding, relief that even someone like Zintalun admitted the human anomaly. The diplomatic liaison extended one tentacle and activated a translucent panel on a wall. What emerged was smaller than the surrounding cabinets, but the texture of the engraved seal on the metal indicated it held delicate information. "I've spent decades trying to understand how to apply our legal methodologies to them." Ramar let the sentence hang between them before continuing. "And I still haven't found a fully satisfying answer." Zravax spread his tentacles slightly, surprised. "Not even you? But your Vice-Chancellor?" He stopped, unsure how to finish. He didn't want to sound disrespectful, but couldn't hide the obvious. Zintalun finished the phrase for him, without vanity. "I've practiced since before your progenitors were born." A golden pattern rippled across his plates, an unmistakable sign that the diplomat was recalling how many cycles he had borne that burden. "What you perceive as a curricular gap is, in reality, a boundary, one we have tried not to cross unless necessary." Silence settled again. Zravax broke it in a lower voice. "So, there's no human module because we don't know how to teach it?" The diplomat turned with precise degrees. His plates emitted a faint pulse, a reflection of a complete truth. "Not exactly," he clarified, with a calm that did nothing to soften the meaning. "It's because there is still no safe way to address them academically, without fracturing our logic in the process." The room seemed a bit larger, or perhaps the young Vakir simply felt smaller. Ramar looked at him again. "Prepare yourself. What you wish to understand costs all of us, even me." And for the first time since entering the room, Zravax felt something akin to fear. Zintalun had done nothing ostentatious, but even the way he held the edge of the cabinet conveyed a weight of responsibility. From inside, he pulled out a thick folder with a large, intense red seal on its cover. On it, in a sober typeface, it read, Protocolo Alpha Humanae. The diplomat held the folder without opening it, as if measuring whether Zravax truly wished to proceed. This compendium, he said at last, is not part of any program, syllabus, or accessible library. It exists for those who, like you, refuse to accept the simple answer. Zravax noticed some of his plates beginning to vibrate again. To the question, Ramar continued, without harshness, why do we let them represent each other? He opened the folio. The smell hit first, a faint trace of ink, old fibers, and something harder to define, like the paper had absorbed over years the weight of the decisions it contained. Inside were physical pages, some with diagrams, others with margin notes clearly written by hand. Some lines were underlined multiple times as if reviewed to the point of exhaustion. Ramar passed the first page without showing it to him yet. Let's begin with what none of the instructors have wanted to tell you. His voice grew even more precise. We Vakir study all the different jurisprudences of hundreds of sapient species. We become competent in normative frameworks that would be incomprehensible to any other legal representative. He returned to the folder and flipped through several pages. Some bore symbols Zravax recognized as cognitive risk markers, indications that the content had caused problems for those who studied it. The young Vakir leaned slightly forward without realizing it. And the human one? Ramar stopped on a specific page. He did not hand it over. He only held it open enough for himself to read. Humanity, he began, decided not to limit itself to a single legal logic. He lifted his multifaceted gaze. Their laws are alive. They contort to the emotional, historical, and social context of each case. They're not an immovable set. They're a shifting language that they dominate because they breathe it from birth. Zravax felt a tug in his bony plates. Those words, applied to describe a legal body, felt uncomfortable, almost nauseating. That is unworkable for us, Ramar added. Not because we are incapable of learning, but because our primary tool is coherence. He partially closed the folder, as if that gesture set a sanitary boundary on what was allowed to escape. Zravax tried to anchor the chaotic mass of ideas swarming inside him. But we can memorize their codes, their precedents, their jurisprudence. That is a clumsy trick, the diplomat interrupted, with controlled firmness. It is not understanding. Even if you managed it, it wouldn't let you anticipate them. He placed the Protocola Alpha Humanae back into the cabinet. Zravax inhaled deeply. His voice came out quieter. And you? How do you handle it? He finally asked. If you spent cycles working with them, if you know their laws. Ramar took longer to answer than at any point so far. When he did, it sounded like something a Vakir would never admit. Exhaustion. With extended rest after each interaction, he answered, and with internal pains I prefer not to describe. His plates emitted a faint, almost fading glow. I've learned to enter and exit their logic like someone crossing a hostile environment with equipment, protocols, limits, he added. You want to know what happens when human reasoning comes into contact with ours? The statement was so precise that the young Vakir didn't bother denying it. Yes, he admitted. I want to understand where everything breaks. Ramar extended a tentacle toward one of the discrete mechanisms embedded in the opposite wall. It was a direct link module, used only to contact the human delegation when strictly necessary. Then, he said, it's better that you see one do it in real time. The room's light dimmed a shade. Knowing their laws on paper, he continued, is one thing. Watching one of them shape them as they speak is something entirely different. He placed one of his appendages on the panel that opened the communication area. I will show you, Zravax, Nakellon, why humans are, at best, judgeable only by themselves. The interspecies communication module unfolded from the wall like a mechanical petal. The holoscreen lit up in a deep blue tone. The diplomatic liaison adjusted to psi control. He expected to see his human colleague, a robust man with white hair, a deep voice, and a gaze that could cut through arguments like wet paper. The image stabilized, and it was not him. A young human woman appeared. Bright orange hair, alert eyes, professional clothing, far too formal for her age, yet worn with the natural ease of someone who had grown up in judicial corridors. She smiled, revealing she was missing her right canine. "Ramar!" she greeted, leaning toward the camera. "My grandpa's in a hearing with Vientier, the one from the Aquiri delegation." Zintalun lowered his luminance by a degree, the diplomatic equivalent of a sigh. "Adeline Soria Vega," he replied, with a respect few Varkir students would ever receive. "I do not expect you to take the call." The young woman snorted a laugh. "Well, I didn't expect you to call. I'm reviewing interstellar tribunal rulings for my essay, but I can talk." Her eyes sparkled. Ramar stepped aside, letting the image face the other Varkir. "Adeline," he says solemnly, "this is Ravex Nakellen. He brings a legal concern he was meant to discuss with your grandfather. But—" "Hi!" she greeted, dangerously friendly. "What's your area? Procedural comparative law? Cultural interpretation? Oh, maybe frontier precedent?" Zravax felt something like plate misalignment from the biped's energy. He opened and closed his tentacles, trying to produce a phrase that sounded professional. Multi-species representation, litigation, human, normative frameworks. Adeline's eyes widened dramatically. "Human? Seriously? They already teach you that module? Wow, I thought they kept it restricted." Zravax hesitated. "I was redirected to the diplomatic liaison." She let out a quick, mischievous laugh. "Ah, yes, that is so Vakir." Adeline leaned on her elbows on her grandfather's desk and smiled with the ease of someone about to explain something simple. "Okay, Zravax, tell me." She clapped her hands. "Do you guys still define intervention as just doing something?" The young Vakir's frontal plates blinked, startled. That is the standard definition. Direct action that produces a clear result." "Right," she nodded, as if finding it adorable. "Not for us." Zravax felt a pull in his internal organs. "How not?" "Because intervening," the human explained, "can also mean doing nothing when you should do something, or doing something when you should stay still, or even looking like you were going to do something even if you end up not doing it." She smiled without malice. "Look, I'll explain it with a human phrase." She adjusted her orange bangs. When we say someone stuck their hand where it didn't belong, we're not talking about a real hand or a physical place. It's just the idea. Zravex's flotation dropped 2 centimeters, then 3 more. But, he tried. That turns one concept into 3 or 4. "Way more," she corrected cheerfully. "Depends on the case. Each situation changes what's interpreted, which in turn changes the outcome." Zravex's lateral plates vibrated as if trying to escape his own body. His tentacles began losing strength. "How can one term be so many things?" "Well, because for us, every world, every colony ship, we're constantly reshaping them. Even right now, during this video call," she shrugged. "Laws have been adjusted, not to be perfect, but to keep up with people." "Everything changes," she blurted out, half laughing. The young Vakir fell over, collapsing onto his side. His plates dimmed almost completely, a state of pure logical oversaturation. Adeline's mouth fell open, horrified. "What happened to him? Ah! Tell me I didn't kill him." The diplomatic liaison lifted his flotation slightly. "No, not yet," he murmured, as he checked the faintest student. "He has reacted exactly like those among us who experience a true first encounter with human legal logic." Adeline's eyes widened sharply. "Is it really that bad?" Ramar turned his gaze toward the holoscreen. "Humans who can be judged." He paused heavily. In theory. The young woman frowned. Is that supposed to be a Vakir saying? It is now, he answered. Adeline squinted as if recalling some protocol. Should I send a diplomatic basket? Maybe chocolates? That's what we do when... She glanced off screen. Ah, Grandpa, you're back. What? No, I'm not using the diplomatic channel. The transmission cut abruptly, leaving the office in a muffled silence. The Vakir Vice-Chancellor looked at Sravax. Colour was returning to his tentacles. He considered how far the young one had come, farther than most of their kind dared even to attempt. Sravax let out an incoherent murmur, his plate shuddering erratically. Humans, romantos, too many definitions. Humans, yeah. And though he would never admit it, Ramar felt a spark of pride.